So just a little update for you guys, what we've been talking about with middle schoolers over the last couple of Sundays. It's been a lot around charity, about love, in two different ways. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about charity in terms of how we view that word, the word charity, which means love, but how we view that in America today. And I think that it's obvious that we view it more in an extraordinary sense than an ordinary sense. And what I mean by that is we think about the extraordinary ways that we can be charitable, such as volunteering at the Open Door Mission, donating clothes to the Goodwill, going on a mission trip, things like that. Those are extraordinary, out of the ordinary, unusual things that we could do. Now, some folks do them quite often, but still they're not our everyday experience. You might do it on the weekend, you might do it once a month, once a year, things like that. So what I was telling the students is when it comes down to charity, charity means love of God and love of neighbor. For their own sake. So love of God for God's own sake and love of neighbor for neighbor's own sake. That's what charity would mean. And when it comes to that in the ordinary life of a student, it would simply be being a good, number one, I guess, being a good Christian, being a good follower of Jesus Christ. That would be primary when it comes to God. But when it comes to the interactions that we have amongst our families, it would be being a good son, being a good daughter, being a good brother, being a good sister. And that's how we ordinarily see that in our lives. I talk so often, especially to our high school kids, but starting to talk a little bit with our middle school kids about this being your number one way. Jesus speaks so often in the Gospels, not the Gospels, but the New Testament speaks so often about love, and without love, like your faith is dead. Like you might do all of these things, but if you do them without love, they're worthless. So love being so important, charity being so important, and in no better way could a student do that than simply being a good son or daughter, brother or sister. And it's obviously the hardest time to do it, because when we think about our families, we take advantage of them the most, we disrespect them the most, we say things that we'd never say to anybody else. So really viewing this place as a place to not take advantage of people or to be disrespectful to people, but to actually love these people the most. And they're the hardest to love too, which gives us the biggest opportunity to do that. So, hey, you're welcome. Getting your guys' backs, trying to encourage your guys' students to be better sons and daughters. Hey, but it goes for my kids too, man. And myself too as a parent. Like my number one realm or my number one battleground when it comes to being charitable is my family, is my wife, is my kids. I can come in here and be great to all of your guys' kids, but if I'm not great to my own son, my own daughter, my own wife, then I'm missing out. I'm not doing what I'm called to do. I'm not fulfilling my ordinary responsibilities as a Christian when it comes to loving my neighbor as myself. So as we went along with love this last week, we talked about the 4 different types of love in Greek, which were storge, philia, eros, and agape. And many of you guys have heard of these before, but a lot of our students haven't heard about them. We think that when we talk about love, there's one kind of love, and it means everything. Love everybody, all these things. But really, we can break these things down. So being able to share with our students that storge love is a love that you would that I spoke about previously, that you would have amongst your family, where you love your mother, where you love your father, where you love your siblings, where you love your daughter, where you love your grandma, etc. That kind of familial love. And we see that often, that kind of affection that we show. And I talk about it in a lot of these videos, actually. The second one would be filial love. There are two guys that graduated here last year. They were 8th graders last year. They're freshmen this year. And they exemplified this filial love. If we think about Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, they exemplified this filial love to the maximum. And I think a lot of times in America today, when we have two men or two women who love each other to this extent, we instantly think like, there must be something romantic going on around here. You guys got a bromance or something like that. And we really we don't do it justice. We don't speak to what it truly is, but it's two men or two women or a man and a woman who just love each other as friends. And that being a very good thing to do, not a disordered thing, not a weird thing, but a very good thing. But for some reason in America, we just really rebel against it and think that it's something that it's not. So I was able to tell these students, like, hey, if you have that really good friend that you are just like two peas in a pod, or however you want to think about it, that's a good thing, and it's called filial love. Now then obviously we get to the eros love, which is the more romantic type of love. And that's what we oftentimes think about when we think about love. Like if I were to say I love that person, or even like the word intimacy, like me and that person share an intimate bond, we automatically go to this eros love, which is true, but it's only an aspect of love. A love that would be shared between a spouse, things like that. And that's the obvious one we think about. I don't need to go into that one too much. That's our default. But just to tell you guys, it's only an aspect of it, but a very good aspect of it and a very true aspect of it. To tell these students that this kind of love or these kind of feelings aren't bad things. They're very good things to have. But as I've talked about in other videos, inappropriate times, inappropriate places with appropriate people would be kind of a boundary you'd set around that, where it's not just for everybody. And then finally, that agape love. And I think one thing I tried to tell these students the other night was that agape love is an unconditional love, a love of God for His creation. And it's unconditional. I think that parents are the closest thing we can see to unconditional love. And I think that many parents would express unconditional love. And I don't think that they're wrong in saying that. However, I don't think they can fully be unconditional with their love, although they might be as close as possible to that. But as parents, we're sinful. You know, we aren't perfect. So there's no way we could love with that perfect unconditional love that God has for us. So agape would be this perfect love that God has for His creation, where there's nothing that I could do that could take away God's love. No amount of sin that I could do that would take away God's love. God continues to love me no matter how I behave, how I act, how I am towards Him. Now, my actions could separate us, could damage this relationship, could sever this relationship that I have with God, but it doesn't change the fact that God loves me. It's me choosing to turn my back on God, and God would never turn His back on me. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys, and maybe even ability to open up some conversations with your students, as I always exhort you guys to do, just to talk about love and what that means, especially in the wake of Valentine's Day. Again, I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to your students about this, and I hope that you guys continue to carry on these conversations at home. And God bless you guys.